November 9th meeting of Henderson County Fiscal Court. We're glad you're with us today. As always, we will start with an invocation, and Pastor Bach White of Airline Baptist Church is with us. Reverend White, would you please lead us in prayer?
Shall we pray? Father God, I come before you this morning, Lord, and I just humbly present myself, Lord, as your servant, as your messenger, Father God. And so I ask this now. I ask your hand upon everything that takes place, Lord, not just here, but, Lord, as we go about living lives, Lord. I pray that you seek to show us your face, and we desire to see it, Lord God. I pray that you touch each and every one that's here this morning, Lord, that as the business is conducted, Lord, that it be done so in a way that, Lord, it would be fitting to you. And so, Lord God, I pray for your hand upon everything once again. I pray for your goodness and your glory to be seen, and I pray for us to just look to you, Lord God. I pray all of this in your wonderful and holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bach. Appreciate that very much. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Magistrate McCollum?
Here.
Magistrate Berry?
Here.
Magistrate Southern?
Here.
Magistrate Moran?
Here.
Magistrate Putman?
Here.
You have before you the minutes of the October 26th, 2021 meeting. After a period of review, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other corrections, clarifications, additions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and we continue on with our recognition of our judges scholars. And this morning with us is Paige Bennett from Cairo Elementary School, and I'd like to ask Paige to meet me right down in front right here. We're going to read a proclamation in Paige's honor.
Paige Bennett has been chosen by Cairo Elementary School to be the recipient of the Judges Scholar Award due to exceptional efforts in both academics and school activities. And whereas Paige's hard work and dedication in making the most of educational experiences, developing positive relationships with teachers and other students will lead to future success. And whereas success is measured in many different ways, whether it be passing a test, scoring the winning point, achieving a particular goal, or taking the necessary steps for overall improvement, and whereas the Henderson County school system could not let Paige's efforts go unnoticed, and whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court supports the school system and acknowledges these accomplishments as being significant because students such as Paige Bennett will be our future leaders. And now, therefore, I, Brad Schneider, County Judge Executive of Henderson, join with the Henderson County Fiscal Court to proclaim today, November 9th, 2021, as Paige Bennett Day.
Come on up and get in the picture. Yeah, now the everybody. Hold on to that still. I'm gonna get all of it.
Bill will take it. Bill will take it.
You're proud.
Oh, you need to get on the outside for All right, everybody smile. All right, all over. Expired. smile. I got
And you sit in the chair right there. Sit with us the rest of the meeting. All right, congratulations, Paige, and to all the Bennett family. Very proud of you.
This is the third Bennett sister.
Hmm?
This is the third Bennett.
Number 3.
Wow. Gosh, what is in the water out there?
Yeah, the pressure was on. That bar
Yeah.
was raised when the first thing. Yeah. And I know I've seen Alan's been here to one of them.
That may be a first. 3 from one family. Oh, my gosh. Well, congratulations, Paige. And now the fun starts, and I'm being facetious about that. Okay, next in your packets are 2 recertifications for our conservation district. This is a necessary step they take each year to make sure these districts are on record with the State Soil and Water Commission. So, any questions about these?
We don't have to take any action on this, do we, Judge?
We just have to-
We're all for it.
We just acknowledge the
Yeah.
process, and that's, we don't have to approve it or deny it. It's just we have to acknowledge that they are going through us for it.
Yeah.
So,
So we'll have it on the record that we did receive these and acknowledge them. Any questions? I thought there might be questions, but again, this is a recertification process.
Do we just want to make a motion to accept them, just so it's on the minutes?
Sure.
So make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we got a couple bid openings. And because of our microphone situation, Bill, make sure you lean into that mic a little bit so we make sure we can hear you.
Bridge, demo and installation.
Okay, the first bid openings that I'm going to be doing is for the Cooper Bridge replacement in the Smith Mills area. As you all know, this bridge has been closed by the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet due to some structural deficiencies, and we have received some emergency funding on it. The first bid is for the bridge structure itself.
Thank you, Bill.
This is in Tim's district again, isn't it?
This is from E&H Bridge and Grading out of Bedford, Indiana. This is for a steel bridge. Total cost $103,747 even. That's for a 44-foot long, 24-foot wide, 30-degree right-hand skew bridge with guardrail.
Have you dealt with them before?
Do what?
Have you dealt with them before?
Yes. The next bids I'll be opening for the Cooper Road Bridge. This is for the demolition and the construction of the new bridge.
Hey, Bill, before you get to those, do you want to review E&H's bid and come back to us? Or would you like, they're the only bidder.
What I'd like to do, Judge, is open these bids up and then open up the ones on the courthouse steps, because I will not be here on our next fiscal court meeting. I'd like to excuse myself while you conduct court, go back and review them, and come back for the good of the county and make my recommendations today.
Okay.
All right, the first one here is from M&G Services LLC out of Marion, Kentucky. they did not give enough for me to pass out. So bid price, $64,850.
Just who put the last bridge in?
Do what?
Is that who did our last bridge?
That's who did that's the same company that did the Roberts Road Bridge that we just completed. The next one is from M. Bowling Incorporated. And they bid two structures. They bid the structure itself at $99,000. This is for the bridge deck. $99,792. And pre-stressed concrete deck. Now this is for the installation, correct? Installation, not the deck. They bid it two ways because we bid it for either a steel bridge or a concrete deck. So $99,792 for the steel deck, and pre-stressed concrete was $97,972. And we have one here from Galusha Contracting in Bowling Green. And this one here is a turnkey for a pre-stressed concrete bridge, deck, and a construction. They bid both in one package here. And total price, $236,597. And they did not break it out between the two, the structure and the construction. Okay.
Courthouse Steps.
These bids are for the courthouse steps reconstruction. First bid is from Rivertown Construction. $127,500 even. Second one is from M. Bowling Incorporated. $109,600. Third bid is from Hazex Construction. $109,498.
And that includes us bringing the materials
Yes,
to fill.
this had us bring in the concrete, supplying concrete and any kind of backfill rock materials. I met with all three contractors on site, and everything was explained. We will cordon off an appropriate area for them to stage their equipment out here on the street. We'll make available for them any kind of access way that they might need to bring their pump trucks in. They will supply all the steel and required rebar or wire mesh for the concrete. And that is removing all of the stamped and painted concrete out front. Any questions? I'm gonna go take a look at all this stuff while you guys carry on court.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bill.
Next on the agenda is a review of Chapter 195 of our ordinance dealing with creation of a code enforcement board. And instead of first reading, Mr. Gold and his team thought it might be good to draft it, bring it back to us, and discuss it here. Not necessarily take a vote today, but discuss it. I think there are a couple options in here that we probably need to decide upon, and I don't think Kyle Evans is with us yet.
He is on his way. If we can pass this for just a minute or two.
I'll do it.
He's stuck over across the street. He should be here in just a second, he said.
Okay, we'll move on to the Sheriff's Monthly Report, which is in your packet. Normal report.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the Sheriff's Monthly Report. Anything you want to add to that, David? Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Gold, your report? Oh.
I need to get some help, Judge.
Gotcha.
Judge, we have several checks today. First, dental and life insurance in the amount of $200.36 and $13.89. Health insurance, $3,323. Aflac, $92.18. Flow through from the city, $458.33. Jail fees, $56.25. Interest in the amount of $4.10, $3.78, and $11.34. Bringing today's total to $4,163.23, and I'm going to ask Paige to take that to the judge for me. She said she never held $4,163.
This is the Bennett Express. There you go.
Move to accept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions of Mr. Gold? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And Paige, now you know what it's like to grow up. You get some money in your hands, and next thing you know, you have to
Give it to the
away.
government. Yeah. Good point. If I can ask Ms. Ryder to come up and walk us through this budget amendment. This is amending in to our road fund some extra monies, correct?
Yes, this is the second reading of the budget amendment number 1 for this fiscal year. The total amount of this amendment is $525,790. This is increasing the receipts of the road fund as well as increasing the expenditure accounts. The revenue funds, or the revenue categories is transportation cabinet, truck license distribution, and miscellaneous revenues. The appropriation categories are contracted construction, bridges, and road maintenance asphalt. The total of this budget amendment is $525,790.
Make a motion to approve.
You have a motion and a second, and obviously this accounts some for the extra money we put towards roads and bridges through the ARPA funds that we pulled into our budget to account for shortfalls.
Yes, that is represented in the miscellaneous revenues of $450,000.
Right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Want to just keep on going?
I have no transfers for today. I do have claims from the general fund to Magistrate Berry in the amount of $588.48. This is for reimbursement of training expense and is to come from the fiscal court conference appropriation line. To Visa in the amount of $543.60. The majority of this is for judge and staff conference and training expense and is to come from that appropriation line. To Magistrate Southern in the amount of $518.85. This is reimbursement of training expense and is to come from the fiscal court conference training appropriation line. To Magistrate Moran in the amount of $613.19. This is for reimbursement of training expense and is to come from the fiscal court training expense appropriation line.
Make a motion to pay the claims.
I've still got some.
You done?
I had to do something.
You took a breath and paused.
From the jail fund to Advanced Document Solutions in the amount of $1,140.50. This is for copier lease and expenses and is to come from the data processing equipment appropriation line. To HMC Service Company in the amount of $3,411.50. This is for quarterly maintenance service agreement and is to come from the equipment repairs and maintenance appropriation line. To U.S. Bank, which is the credit card for the detention center, in the amount of $1,391.52. The majority of this is for training and travel and building repairs and maintenance and is to come from those two appropriation lines. To Corson Fire and Safety, $5,927. This is for annual inspections and is to come from the equipment repairs and maintenance appropriation line. To Corson Environmental Services in the amount of $640.90. This is for exhaust cleaning and is to come from equipment repairs and maintenance appropriation line. That's all the claims.
Butch?
I'd like to make a motion to pay all the claims.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
That was more than a few.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Kyle just walked in the room, and Kyle, if you want to come up front, we will rejoin the conversation about Chapter 195 of County Court of Ordinances. And I just teed it up earlier by saying that really don't want to have a first reading today. We want to talk a little bit about the draft you've submitted with Steve and your thoughts and things we need to think about. And for the members of the court, I would like to have this discussion now in order, if the conversation goes smoothly, to have first reading next fiscal court meeting. So feel free to treat this like a workshop. I think we have time. With that, I'll turn it over to the attorney.
Judge, thanks. We've got just a couple of points where we'd like to get some input. And, you know, a lot of times when we're drawing up ordinances, there have to be some decisions made. And when those decisions go from legal decisions to policy decisions, that's when we're like, hey, we really need the fiscal court to weigh in here. And we reached a couple of those as we were doing this. And I want to, first of all, thank Kyle for all the work that he's done on this. And I know he's met with Randy extensively about this. And Randy, I don't know if you want to come up with Kyle. As you all know, what this ordinance does, and we talked about this at the work sessions, is that it takes a lot of the code violations and it makes them civil fines that go through a civil board in response to some legislation that was passed not too long ago. And what that does is that allows us to get liens that last a little bit longer. It also allows us to be a little more nimble. Sometimes these things get balled up in court for a long time. I think Randy had one that the courts just kept continuing and continuing until the person died. And then it just kind of disappeared, and the case never really was able to move forward, even though we were saying, hey, we're ready for a trial. They kept getting continuances. So this is something, this would be a board that's going to be able to actually be a little more nimble and get these things done. And it's been working well with the city and several other counties that we found across the state. But like I said, as we went through here, we found a couple of places where we'd like some more input. Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Absolutely. I won't go, we talked about this a couple meetings ago. I'm not going to go back through all the details, but some local jurisdictions have added more than just Randy. Right now, our draft says that the Henderson County Codes Administrator will be our officer, the one who goes out and issues citations. Other jurisdictions have added other folks, police officers, sheriffs, deputy sheriffs, water department. I mean, it's not limited to just Randy. If there are any other folks that would be appropriate to issue these citations, observe these violations, that's something that you could specify other folks. So.
That is section 13.28, subsection 5, defining who the code enforcement officer is. It's on your second page.
Yeah.
It's under definitions, and it's who you define as the code enforcement officer. Like Kyle said, other jurisdictions use this type of board for all kinds of things, any sort of ordinance violation. And so that's why they broaden it to law enforcement and things like that. We just wanted to bring that up to you. I think based on the way so far that we are planning on using it, at least to begin with. It makes sense for it to be Randy, but if at any point there needs to be an expansion of that could be done. But we wanted to run that by you all because that's something it's easy enough to fix right now.
I think it makes sense to have Randy also be the enforcement officer because we're limiting the scope of this compared to other counties. And I think Randy's got plenty of time and he'll be most familiar with the violations, so I think that's a good way to go.
Fair enough.
My opinion.
Sheriff, but have you looked at it? I didn't know if he would want to, or he could think of reasons why it might be better to have, even, Randy would be the main person, but if his deputy saw something, maybe they ought to be able to have that authority. I don't know.
We'll circulate a copy to the sheriff.
And I wouldn't suspect there's anything that prevents Randy from asking a sheriff's deputy to accompany him.
Absolutely, and nothing would prevent them from calling him out to issue a citation if they observe
Right.
something in the course of some other investigation.
Yeah.
So that's one of the decision points, and I think one of the others had to do with the, well, there's one, it's a little bit later, I think it's page, there it is. On page 11, number 12 there, it's the end of 13-43. That says the Henderson County Attorney is given authority to sign any release of liens under this section on behalf of the County of Henderson. Once a lien is paid off, it has to be released within a certain number of days, and most counties are, and most cities and counties are giving their attorney the authority to go ahead and release those liens to make sure it's done in time without bringing it before the court. However, anytime we were putting something in there that gave us the authority to do something, we wanted to bring that up to the court and see if you wanted somebody else to sign those. It could be the county judge, can be anybody else.
I'm okay with Steve.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it is another level of check and balance against, just getting these liens out the door without, at least one member or supporter of fiscal court knowing. And I think leaving it with the attorney's office, the county attorney's office, makes sense to me too.
Just, like I said, before we gave ourselves authority to do something.
Anybody else have any questions about that?
No.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other issues that came up is some different communities do it different ways. I know Magistrate McCollum is familiar with currently the way it is in Henderson with it going through court. Each day of a violation is a separate fine. And so sometimes people that don't do something for, 180 days are potentially subject to $180,000 worth of fines. Some of them are up to $1,000 a day. Realistically being able to collect that is somewhat difficult. However, it does encourage somebody to go ahead and get that work done and then not have to pay that sort of fine. Currently, and the way most jurisdictions have adopted these code enforcement boards, there's one fine plus the cost of abatement, the cost of fixing it, tearing it down, mowing, doing whatever, and then there's a fine with it. Some cities and counties have gone in there and specifically said if it is a lasting violation that it can be cumulative on a per day basis. Did I do that in enough of a nutshell?
Minority of jurisdictions,
Yes.
1 or 2 have used that language to make it a daily civil penalty is what they phrase it.
And so that's the question before we made a decision on that, because obviously that could add up. Now, the fines generally on this that Randy had suggested, I think you'll find those on page 15. Those were developed in consultation with Mr. Tassa. Currently, that's written with what a majority of the jurisdictions have done and made it a one fine in addition to the cost of fixing everything up or taking care of whatever the issue was. So we just wanted to put that out there since we saw that there were some cities and counties, even though it is the majority, or the minority, sorry, doing it that way. we wanted to check with you all and see how you wanted that done.
And that language is in there right below number 2, the contested violation section.
Oh, we
Starts
did
with-
put that in last night. We made it a
I
per
put in
day,
just
yeah.
so you could see it,
So-
take a look at it.
Yeah, under 2, that paragraph down there at the bottom does make it an additional up to, at the discretion of the board, up to $100 a day for not getting into compliance. So that would be a choice whether you want that paragraph in there or not.
As a prosecutor, I would want it in. Now, we had it before on several items, and I don't know that we ever enforced it, but it was used as part of our settlement process. Okay, if you go ahead and take care of it and do this, we'll only collect one fee. But it does give the prosecutor a little more oomph to try to encourage people to go ahead and get things taken care of, and they can see this $100 a day accumulating, and then it just helps, in my opinion, get people to get off the square and do something, start doing something.
So in your mind, it's more of a hammer and not something that will be implemented very often?
I don't think it would be implemented much at all. It's normally, and I guess we would want to be sure that the prosecutor had that ability to, or maybe I guess you could come back to us, but I don't think we would ever have any problem, because we're not trying to be punitive. We just want to get people, and people can come up with all kinds of excuses, and just like the one he talked about where they just kept continuing and continuing and continuing, this helps prevent that from happening.
And it is only if a hearing, and there would have to be a finding that it was, continuing, so it's not just an imposition immediately.
And it would be at the discretion of the board, and it's
Discretion
up
of the
to
board.
100, so they could drop it to $1 a day.
If they
or
decide not to
whatever.
do it,
Yeah.
of course, there are increasing fines for second offense and greater.
Right.
So even if Randy went back and cited them the next week, I mean, there's still somewhat of an increasing penalty there as well.
I was thinking about it as you were reading it, and Steve's point about collecting it was something I thought about some more. And but I do like what Mr. McCollum has to say about it, kind of being a nuclear option to really make sure everybody knows this is serious. They're going to have to get used to this code enforcement board's abilities and authorities, and I do think that having a really significant penalty if you completely ignore us, like some people have done in the past, might be a good thing, might be a pretty good thing to do. And having it at the discretion of the board puts a little bit of a carburetor on that. But what do y'all think?
So if they've issued a penalty and they're working towards getting it corrected, let's say they have a house they're redoing, the board can always waive those penalties, right? It's not, we issued this citation and it's this
It's not
much a day.
mandatory, no.
Well, and the ordinance, and Kyle, I'm not sure I can quote it chapter and verse, but I think the ordinance does allow Randy to give people a warning of up to a certain number of days as well before he actually issues the citation.
Mhm.
So it's not necessarily a gotcha type thing.
And we don't go right to a penalty necessarily.
Section 176-17 has a time limit that I can give up to,
Yeah.
people to correct that.
Has the 60 days, 30 days.
And that would be another thing, if you all want to, that's another decision point. Working with Randy, we came up with that time period, but if you want a different time period there for the maximum amount of time that he can give somebody to get in compliance before issuing the citation, that can be changed as well.
I think that's reasonable.
Or you could take it out if you want and say he doesn't give a warning, he just goes out and does it, but.
Tim's point, we want to give people a chance to comply.
Right.
Randy, so if you went out and it was just junk, accumulative, there's just a lot of junk on the piece of property, you could give him 60 days to clean that before a fine would kick in.
Yes, you can give up to, depending on the ordinance, I believe for, let's see, 176-7.
So different things have different
176-12, that would be
Yeah,
seven.
That was under our bridge,
Yeah, it'd be 7 days, but it's like for unsafe structures, it's 60 days. Each one kind of calculated how many days it would take to do something, depending on how big of a issue or project it could be, or the cost involved. Grass was one of those ones that we put down as a lower amount of time frame, which is 7 days, because
You're right.
of course, each day it gets worse and worse. But some of the ones that are going to take a little longer, we gave them a little more of a time period to try to correct that.
And so each of those number of days on page 14 could be changed as well. Those are the ones that Randy thought was appropriate, but again, if you all think those need to be extended or shortened, that's fine too.
Now, Randy's had this problem, like on the Berry property. Some of his stuff was done before our ordinances were done, so it's sort of grandfathered in. Isn't that the case? Up on
Yeah, I
Randy?
think,
But he kept bringing in stuff, but having Randy catch them bringing more garbage and junk is difficult for him to do. And, I mean, I guess we fought that for 30 years just about.
and I think the state had gotten involved too before, and,
But I mean, we ended up spending $17,000 in demolishing the building, and unfortunately, we did not collect any lien, and the lien expired, and we messed up.
and this ordinance here will help out with that whole lien process, because this gives us a lot more time period to
Right.
put these liens on the property to recoup that, hopefully.
Can I ask a question? Is there, I mean, in my mind, I would like, and this is something that I don't think we do now, we just had $500 mowing somewhere down near the old racetrack.
Yeah,
It's
out on
on the
Sunset
bill
Lane.
last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like a report, some way to make sure there's a report to fiscal court anytime you spend any money, so that we know that it's coming and something's been done. And then I'd also like a report when we file the lien, so that the clerk can keep track of it and have it on a time schedule, so we don't let the liens expire. I don't know what we need to do that, but I think
Makes sense.
that's all important. And I think we need, and in your report, I'd like to know why we're doing it. You know, we're spending our county's money, so we need to know why this had to be done and why the owner didn't do it, or what all you've done, so we can keep track of it. And if you could tell me what happened on that $500 mowing job.
And I think of this ordinance, some of the revisions in there kind of help with that. There's a lot more steps and processes as far as recording things and keeping track of things and sending out letters to inform lien holders and stuff like that.
Makes the process a lot more transparent.
Yeah.
So I think some of that should be generated through that, the minutes of that board as well, because they'll be on top of a lot of those
Okay.
issues.
Okay, so we'll
Because
get the minutes.
he'll be reporting those to that
Okay.
board.
But I also think Charlie's talking about very early in the process, getting some reports coming in
Well,
before we.
I just want to put it on like an Excel spreadsheet, and then having a calendar that this thing runs out in 10 years, and, you know, in at least a year. And I think Mr. Gold's office ought to get it too. And, because he's going to have to look at this thing and see what the expenses are. You know, I mean, we don't want to spend a whole lot of money going after some bad money if we're not going to get it. You know, if it's one of those situations where we've got 80 heirs and it's going to cost us $350 an heir to get and if we can get the law changed where we can do it like the city does, that'd make just a tremendous difference. But right now, we don't want to spend, heired property just sort of scares me. I mean, we may have to do it and realize we're eating the cost for 10 years, but a lot of times these heirs, I mean, everybody thinks their little interest is worth more than it is. But nobody will give it up and nobody will do anything, and it's just, it's really hard to deal with people. I mean, that was grandma's home, and whatever, so. But I just think we need to keep track of it and then make a decision.
And you can do that in your office, right, Randy? Yeah. And Master McCollum's suggestion about reports to fiscal court, this is separate than this ordinance. It's just a separate request from you to provide those to us and start that spreadsheet. That'll help be more organized when we get to things that are involved in this ordinance. Am I characterizing that correctly? Mr.
I think so.
Commissioner?
But,
Yeah.
I mean, just this last May, we had $30,000 worth of work that you all had done expire. There were two big ones. One was the berries and one was another one.
It's not mine, by the way.
No, I'm sorry.
Not that.
I'm sorry.
No.
No, it's not Keith's.
Keith's lawn is perfect.
Yeah, Keith's lawn is just mowed. It's got the lines in it where he goes two directions.
So before we get too far afield here, we were talking about the time periods for each of the violations. Anybody have any thoughts about the time periods listed? I think they're acceptable.
I'm okay with them, yeah.
And also the issue of whether or not there should be the daily fines, which it sounds like there's a consensus that the board should have that option if
I
there's
think the
continued
language,
failures.
the language in the draft is acceptable to me.
It is to me, too.
Me too.
But the board's also gonna have the
Yes.
power to say they're working on it.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
It won't be, there's some big old houses in Henderson County that people buy to fix up, and it takes time, sometimes more than 60 days.
And I think a lot of this will, be Randy's reports to the board, his thoughts about whether people are complying, working with his office. I think that'll play on a lot of it. One of the most frustrating things is when we can't get an answer from anybody. And Randy's got to judge, okay, do we really start the civil process or do we not?
Right.
Nobody wants to be punitive, but we also want to get this stuff done. So.
Even in past, there's never been really going to across the street to court if people are making progress. It's only basically if no one's, returning phone
Just
calls,
not doing
no one's
anything.
making any effort of correcting the violation. The end goal is to get the properties cleaned up and
Yeah.
looking more presentable.
I mean, you're looking to make sure there's progress being done.
Yes.
And if there's progress being done, you work with them, and that's. at
But
least that's
this
my-
could be subjective, right?
Yeah.
So, my property is right down here. You give Tim a little more time, then.
Well,
then
and
I
that's,
find like, well, no, I'm not getting the same break.
that's one of the reasons that we saw that a lot of these communities were putting in those timelines on the warning letters and things like that, just so it's not that Butch gets a warning for, a year and somebody else gets a warning for, 2 days, to make sure that there's at least some consistency, that there's a maximum amount of time. And then once that expires, after they've been warned and done nothing, that Randy then has to bring it before that
Well,
board.
and you're getting to where I was going, consistency.
Right.
It's got to be consistent. People look at it subjective, like, oh, he got something I didn't, but as long as you're consistent or we're consistent.
Well, and it's going to be important to have a board that is consistent. And I
Yeah,
think
the
that's going to
board
be
as
very
well.
important, who you appoint on that board, how they're trained, and how dedicated they are to being consistent and treating everybody the same.
And the board will be appointed by,
By fiscal court. I'll bring you names and we'll vote on them. Right now, we have a Board of Housing Appeals that ostensibly kind of was responsible for these violations. They haven't met in a long time, as far as I know, but we know who they are, who the current board members are, and I'm going to be reaching out to them to see if they'd like to go ahead and serve on this board with your permission. We need at least 5 according to the ordinance, and there are 5 current members of the Board of Housing Appeals, so we'll be reaching back out to them.
And this board is probably going to need to meet more frequently. One of the things that Kyle and I discussed that we saw some other counties using very well is they were taking every citation written by their code enforcement officer, and the code enforcement officer was at least presenting that at every meeting, just to keep them up to speed of what's going on, show some pictures, things like that. So that kept everybody apprised of things. The ordinance calls for monthly meetings, and I think that's, Randy's going to be able to, once he writes that citation, he's going to say that you'll have an opportunity to contest this at the hearing that will be held, because they'll know exactly what day it's going to be, because they'll have a schedule. So I think there's a lot of good to that. So it's going to be a little more of a working board than the current one, but they're going to have some more authority, and so I think it's going to be a positive thing.
And not paying the fine within 7 days or requesting the hearing in writing, actually, they waive, it becomes a non-appealable final order. But to present it, it keeps everything clean, make sure that it gets processed, make sure that, then you have minutes, an agenda that then shows later on what action was taken, and if the board did find, this fine, this, this abatement cost, whatever.
It makes everything a whole lot cleaner.
Makes it very good, yes.
The question was about membership to the board as well. So members on page 3, members of the Code Enforcement Board shall be appointed by the county judge, subject to the approval of the fiscal court. So,
There is going to be a cost involved. You saw that, $50 a day for at least in this ordinance, this draft. For members of that board, we'll also have to supply them a secretary, which will most likely be a cost to get somebody to do it. The pace of this board is going to be a little bit more active, and as Steve said, probably very important to do that work well. So we might have to
I think
carve out some time and money to get that done.
And probably at first, we're gonna need one of the attorneys to be there to make sure that everybody gets in the groove and
Yeah.
realize how important to keep those minutes and keep everything up to date.
And Kyle might be able to quote chapter and verse here, but there's a line in here that says that the county attorney's office represents the board. So we will be doing that. The question will be if and when the board well, we represent the board. The question will be if and when Randy, if, let's say there's a full-blown trial type situation or something, if there needs to be counsel for Randy in presenting that evidence, that could end up becoming a cost because we can't represent the judge of everything and present evidence as well. That blurs some lines there. That's a problem. But I'll also point out down on page 15, that schedule of violations, you'll notice there that there's those fines that are collected that goes to the county, which should defray some of the cost of having that administration. And you'll also notice that an uncontested fine is one amount. A contested one that requires a hearing, if they're found to have violated the ordinance, the fine is higher, and some of that is to defray the cost of having that secretary or executive assistant do all that additional work that goes along with that.
Section 1338 talks about the presentation of cases to the board. Each case shall be presented by an attorney selected by the county. It can be presented by Randy, which is typical of what most places do. And the attorney can either be counsel to the code enforcement board or present, but not both. So.
Anticipate, 99% of the time Randy presenting the
Yes.
information of the board.
That seems to be common in reading other minutes from other counties to see how they've done this. It seems common.
So are there any of your questions we haven't addressed in this conversation yet?
I don't think so. Randy and I spoke yesterday about maybe one tweak to a few of the further revisions there in 176, and we'll talk more about those. If I change anything after talking to him, I'll make sure I send out a red line version so everybody can see it. But it should be a very minor tweak, if anything.
Okay.
And members of the fiscal court, as we move toward first reading at the next meeting, if any of you all have any concerns or questions about how's this actually going to work in practice or anything, just give us a call. Or if you have any suggestions for tweaks to any of those sections in here or any of the other ones, just give us a call and let us know, and we'll move forward.
On this, the $50 compensating, should we have to lay out a schedule? I mean, you'd like to think that wouldn't happen, but I could meet every day. Yeah.
Well, we have a schedule, fourth month, 12 times a year, monthly. If they see the need for a special called meeting, I think we'd have to go with it. If we're appointing people who are milking the county budget just for the sake of it, I think we can replace them. We have the ability to replace them.
So we can remove them
Yes.
at any time.
You can change your ordinance if we have to.
But we do have the ability to
I hate to
change.
think negative, but I live in the real
Absolutely.
world.
Yeah. Well, and just like the fiscal court, at the first meeting of the year, we set a schedule for the rest of the year for the regular scheduled meetings.
Yes.
My assumption is that's what they would do there, is they would set their regular monthly meetings. Now, if they had some major issue, I'm not sure what it would be, but if there was something where they knew there was going to be a, several hours long hearing over a violation or something where there were going to be, a lot of attention on it that was going to require a special hearing, they would have to do a special called meeting just like fiscal court does.
Okay.
So they'd be subject to open meetings just like any other body.
And 1333 does address it. We put in there, and this was either after discussion last time I was here or with Randy, I can't recall, but shall be held on the fourth Monday of every month. So it specifies
All right.
exactly what it is.
I think that's something we can monitor, Master at Southern. If it looks like they're taking advantage, we do have recourse, so.
I'm good with that.
I don't know of too many boards where they are eager to get as many in as they can in order to get that $50. It's my experience, it's the other way around it. Minimum amount of time spent. They can. Any other questions? I think we've got some marching orders here.
Thank you all for your input.
No, thank you.
And
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So my goal would be to have first reading next meeting. If you send out a red line with some small tweaks, we can discuss that at the next meeting, but if there are probably things that we can rectify right away, we can go and have first reading. In the meantime, I'll be contacting members of the current Board of Housing Appeals and any other folks I think might be worthy and want to serve on that, and reporting back to Fiscal Court, as well as identifying potential secretary, so that once we pass second reading, we can get this thing up and going as quickly as possible. Okay? Everybody good? Thank you very much.
thank
guys.
you again, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Because we jumped ahead, we're in old business, and now I think these bids qualify as old business. Some time has elapsed.
Thanks.
Judge, if you don't mind, I'm going to go with the Courthouse Steps bid first. After reviewing the bids, it would be my recommendation that we award the contract to Hazex Construction of Henderson, Kentucky, with the low bid of $109,498.
And just curious, Bill, when do they propose starting the project in their bid?
Well, that's what I got to ask them. We would like to start as quickly as possible. That's when I told all the contractors that when I met with them that we want to do this project ASAP. So hopefully we can get it in while weather's still permitting.
We have a recommendation from Bill.
I make a motion to approve as long as Bill's got to oversee and make sure the water drains away from the building.
Yes, sir. That's part of the reason we're doing it. So we have a
second.
motion, yeah, and a second. Any other questions of Bill? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
The second recommendation, this is going to be on Cooper Road Bridge. This is for the bridge structure itself. It would be my recommendation that we award the contract to E&H Bridge and Grading Company, Bedford, Indiana, for a contract price of $103,747.
Do you like that steel, that better than the
Um,
pre-stressed?
Light doesn't come into factor as long as it meets the federal highway standards and state highway standards. I have no reason to not put in a steel graded bridge. There may not be as aesthetically pleasing to the eye as the pre-stressed concrete deck because you have the nice smooth deck, but they are structurally sound, and as we go through time, we will be able to make a determination of which structure lasts longer. I do know that the price of the steel bridge has gone up, but then again, so has the price of the pre-stressed concrete structures due to the steel in them and the concrete itself. They have always been just a little bit higher than the steel bridges, but like I said, they meet the federal and state highway standards, so I see no reason not to go with it. The other one that was in here was a pre-stressed, but the price on that one was about right at about $65,000 more than this will cost us to be bought and installed.
We have a recommendation.
Tim?
Move to accept.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions of Bill?
Now, that was just the structure itself.
Yes, that's the structure. That's
So-
the bridge.
The installation.
The installation is coming up,
Okay. Jump the gun.
one at a
We
time.
got to vote first.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Bill?
Okay. Third recommendation is for the demolition and the construction of the new bridge. It would be my recommendation that we award the contract to M&G Services out of Marion, Kentucky. These were the successful bidders on the Roberts Road Bridge. They did a good job. Everything was done according to specifications and within the time frame. Price $64,850.
I move to accept.
You have a motion and a second. I would note that their bid was quite a bit lower than the others, and it sounds like a good savings for a company that did a good job the last time they were in the county. So, any other thoughts or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Any other old business?
Yeah, I was talking to Denny Branson about something else, and Denny and I got microfilm. We did that together years ago, and I thought maybe I could borrow it, but they use it every day, he says. And while we were talking, I was telling what I was thinking about trying to identify our property that the county's gotten over year easements and right-of-ways and whatnot. And he told me, would you hold up on that? He said, the city needs to do the same thing. Hadn't really thought about it. And he's going to talk to planning and zoning about possibly applying for a grant for that. I hope we would support that. And that brought to my mind, and I hadn't really thought about this, and Steve, if maybe you could do a little research. If the county, I mean, I saw where, like, in the city's boundary lines, whenever I was looking at them, they stopped at 12th Street back in the early part of last century. And up until then, like Parkview subdivision was down the way off of Elm Street, and then on down further, the county got some right-of-ways for the streets and stuff like that. And I'm wondering, I mean, if the county owned a piece of real estate and the city annexes it, the city doesn't get our real estate, but do they get our right-of-ways and easements? It would make sense that they would, but I've never thought about it or researched that.
It's a novel question. Yeah, I'll have to crack some books on it.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's just, but anyway, I just thought that was good, and I just had not thought about the city needing to do the same thing. And Denny said that evidently planning and zoning's got some pretty good people to do the grant writing and whatnot. So I just thought I'd let you all know what was looking like, and I think it's a good idea. I just hadn't thought about it.
Well, keep us posted. I actually talked to Denny last week, just to reach out and say hi, and he mentioned that he was working on something.
Okay.
He didn't go into detail, but
Right. Well, he may not, but
Yeah.
Denny's really he's sort of a nitpicker. If you can get him excited about it, I mean he's an incredible guy. That I mean, he does a really good job. Not all surveyors go back and run those back chains and see where the properties and look at the title records. He does, and I was involved in a lawsuit. The other surveyor hadn't looked at the back stuff. Just, well, it looks like this is where the line's been, and that's what he put down. And then he went back and got the records, and the guy was like 3 feet off in the back and 6 inches off in the front. And then he had the records, the old records to show. It was sort of funny. The neighbors thought they had 50 feet. And like in 1908, the property was sold, and it was a lot of about 50 feet. But actually, it was 46 feet wide if you went back and saw what it was. And so the auction just said about 50 feet, but it wasn't really 50 feet. So then he went back and found it, and he's pretty good.
any other old business? We'll move on to good of the county. Any of our audience members have anything they need to contribute for good of the county? That we'll go around the horn. I'll once again take the pressure off Master Southard and start on this side. Master McCullum?
Paige, you keep up the good work, and we're proud of you, and I know you must work hard, and to be the third person in your family that's done this is pretty cool. But everything is pretty good in the fifth, and I think we're good. Thank you.
Righty, Master Barry.
Paige, congratulations over there. I'd ask your grandfather, I believe, about if there's going to be any more, maybe a fourth Bennett. I think no, not anyway soon, right, Alan? Maybe down the road, but congratulations. I hope you didn't get bored over there. Exciting, huh? I was joking. Yeah. But anyway, congratulations. Keep up the good work. Means a lot. Thank Bill for the update on the repairs along the new blacktop. I appreciate that.
Oh.
Maybe I'll get a positive phone call from that. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
I apologize. I've got more compliments on the blacktop, and I don't have any roads. But, I mean, the people are just really pleased that there's not a seam down the middle. I bet I've had 6 people stop me and talk about it. I mean, it's just incredible. So, thank you.
Okay. Other than that, Judge, I think we're good in the first. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Mr. Golden.
Judge, I think things are going well in the county attorney's office. Always something, but always glad to help. Paige, congratulations again. A lot of what we do ends up in that category of boring but important, and there's a lot of truth to that. Sometimes it's fun and exciting, like when we get to have somebody like you come join us. But the business of the county is something that is, probably kind of like your homework sometimes, boring but important. And as we were reflecting on this, and we had Mr. Evans up here from my office, I was thinking about that, how important it is that we have people doing the things that sometimes aren't super exciting, but can make a big difference for our county. And I'm very thankful for him and everybody else in my office. But I think you're going to make a big difference in this county someday too, and a big difference in the world. So keep doing all the great things that you're doing. And congratulations to your family. You have so many of them here, and they're surrounding you with love and support, and that's part of what makes this happen. And I guess they're just probably going to have to rename it. Instead of Judge's Scholar, they'll just call it the Bennett Award or something like that. Is that what they're going to have to do? But other than that, things are good in the county attorney's office. And always, anybody in the fiscal court needs, feel free to give me a call. We're always here to help.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Master Putman.
Thank you, Judge. Well, Paige, I guess you're one of 3 in the Bennett household. It's kind of a legacy going on here. So I was thinking about something, and when I was looking at you, I said, there's thousands of kids in the school system, and we've probably done maybe 100, a little more than 100 of these Judges Scholars over the last 10 years. I said, if you're just putting it in perspective, you're pretty special, as your sisters were as well. So I commend you for your hard work. And, the future's bright, I think, Judge, for Henderson County when we see all these scholars coming through here that continue, and to see the repeat in the same family. The Bennetts are doing something right there. I don't know if it's in the water or not. But congratulations, Paige, and all's good in the fourth, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Master Moran.
Well, I have to say good things about Paige too, and have been a part of the school system. Schools and teachers are important, but the students who excel are the ones that excel because of family and love and support. So you have that, and keep up the good work. And we want to hear more about you, read about you in the paper later about all the good things you do. So congratulations. And we've enjoyed our new blacktop too, and thank Bill for that, and everything's well in the 2nd District.
Thank you. And now, Master Southern.
So, congratulations, Paige, but the judge said he took pressure off, but everybody's already said everything, so it makes it harder. You get to pick where you want to go eat today, and everybody says double desserts, but you can have anything you want. Today's your day. And I know you're going to be something special because I've seen you do something I rarely see happen. I've seen Bill Hoovey be nice to you.
Things are getting a little dry.
And it's for me.
But again, congratulations. And you pick where you want to eat, and we'll go have a good lunch. Thank you.
Everything else good?
Yep, everything's good.
Is harvest over for you?
No, it's today, probably.
That's excellent.
Hopefully.
Best of luck. I have a few items, so I beg your patience. We had a good meeting at Kentucky Association of Counties Conference last week. A lot of good information. On the very first day, first full day of the conference, Henderson County was quite prominent in mentions. The governor focused on Pratt Industries and as well as the I-69 bridge. It was good to hear him say those things. I always enjoy when any governor points out what's going on in Henderson County as a point of positive reference. And then our own Steve Gold moderated a panel on the impact of local music festivals on local economies, and it was a very interesting conversation. And Steve did a great job, represented the county well, and was obviously very knowledgeable about that topic. We heard more about the continuing questions surrounding ARPA funding and what's eligible and what's not eligible, and we anticipate more guidance. The Treasury gets more feedback every month, and they are seemingly tweaking things. I think there's already been a bit of a push to make more liberal the use of funds that you do not pull into your general fund for transportation infrastructure. And that I haven't seen that exactly spelled out, but what I'm hearing is they may adjust that rule a bit and, allow counties to spend it on transportation infrastructure without having to pull it into the general fund first based on lost revenue, which would help a lot of counties, I think. Many of you have heard about the vaccine mandate deadline or vaccine/COVID testing mandate for large companies as well as governments. The guidance from the White House was made public Friday morning, I think, of CAECO, and it was the talk of the halls. CAECO staff itself didn't know really what to say at that point. They said they were going to have to research this. States immediately filed lawsuits, and there are more than a dozen now, and I'm sure there will be more. And I say all that to say that how that impacts our staff here has yet to be seen. There is a January 5th deadline, January 4th or 5th deadline for us to implement a plan where either we have all of our employees vaccinated or we make them test every week. That is the instruction for companies over 100 employees and governments, I would say, of similar sizes. They were not allowing us to break out government into the sheriff's office and the jail and the judge's office and the road department. We're all one county government, and if we have more than 100 employees, we are subject to this. And so I'm not inclined to make any definitive decisions yet. I want to see more from CAECO advisors as well as how these lawsuits play out. I believe the Department of Labor was supposed to file arguments against the injunction yesterday at 5, and I haven't seen the result of that. I'm sure there will be more lawsuits, and I hope somebody interjects that not just private sector companies with over 100 employees are interested in the result here, but also local governments.
If I may,
Yes.
just on that issue, our office has been following this very closely, obviously, as it impacts the fiscal court. Interestingly, Kentucky is in a bit of a unique position. The OSHA guidelines from the federal government don't necessarily apply to state and local governments unless that state has its own OSHA program, which Kentucky has its own OSHA program called COSH, Kentucky Occupational Safety and Health. And Kentucky's statutory definition of what an employer is does not exempt out government, which is for employee safety on road projects and things like that, probably a good thing. My guess is, I think the legislature goes into session, is it the 8th, January 8th? There will probably be some sort of legislative tweak coming as well to Kentucky's occupational safety and health laws. Now, the question is whether they would actually get passed and signed by the governor and how long it might take to get a potential veto overridden. But this will be happening both in the courts, but a lot of states don't have to worry about state and local governments being affected because they don't have their own state plan. But since Kentucky does, and there are a number of other states that do as well, not every one of those lawsuits necessarily does bring in the whole state and local government issue. But I think we're going to see both litigation through the courts and legislation coming about this as well, because some of it is Kentucky specific. So we're following it. We'll keep you all abreast, but I do think it makes sense not to wait until January to have some sort of plan in place.
Well, we won't, but wanted to wait a little bit to see what transpires in a month.
Oh, absolutely.
And the way this impacts us is, for those employees have three choices. They can either declare religious objection, and there are certain guidelines around how they do that. They can go get vaccinated, or they can agree to test weekly. If we do not implement a plan or we don't enforce it, we're subject to heavy, heavy fines. I think the first violation is something like $14,000, and the second one is multiplied times 10. So the mandate is serious. Of course, the concern here is the cost of testing. The rule puts the onus on employees to test themselves and report to us at their expense. And whether we want to actually make them pay for their own testing would maybe be up to us. There's ways to help them pay for their testing or go ahead and pay for their testing. My concern beyond all that is I don't know how many employees we'd simply lose. They'd walk out. Some of them feel very adamantly about this, and we'd lose them, and trying to replace them would be very, very difficult in this hiring atmosphere. So that is my main concern, is we would lose some really good people over this issue. And I know that's the concern of many, many other municipalities. So we will keep you updated. And hopefully this works out to everybody's benefit. We all want everybody to be safe and mindful of COVID, but this is a drastic step, and it could hurt a lot of local governments.
And I agree with you, and we don't want to lose people, but what I thought was probably going to happen has happened with when you quit giving that $300 a week extra money. We hired 500,000 people in the United States in October. You know, that when people start getting off that free money, they got to go back to work. And I'm hoping that our job situation, and especially at the jail where we can hire people, hopefully that people will start wanting to go back to work because their money's running out and they need a job. So I'm hoping that will help.
Yeah.
But, you know, on the other hand, we're losing more police officers to COVID than to getting shot. Let's get the shots, let's get the vaccinations, and let's be done with this disease.
Yeah, it's a tough question, very tough question. So we'll keep you abreast, obviously. The State of the County video, I think you all have seen it. It is now posted on our website and on our Facebook page. I thought it turned out well. I think it quickly and succinctly delineates a lot of our successes in the last 12 to 18 months. And so I encourage everybody, if you go to our Facebook page, we'll get it up on our website soon. And I think it was a good representation of what we've accomplished. And all of you should be proud of the great things that are happening with county government.
I think the chamber posted it too.
Yeah, they sure did. The Dia de los Muertos celebration we had was really well received again. Thankful for everybody that came out. One of the reasons for that festival is to help bridge the gap between our Hispanic community and the rest of us, and really acknowledge the fact that they are Henderson Countyans. They are just as important to this community as anybody else, and I think that is being accomplished. And one example of that was the request of several Holy Name students who are of Hispanic descent, requested that on the large altar ofrenda, as they call it, under the gazebo, the top shelf of that ofrenda is usually reserved to our most important people, kind of a vote of the organizers who really is significant, that has passed away, that means a lot to us, and it's typically for grandfathers and great-grandfathers and things like that. Well, at the request of these students, they asked that the top shelf be reserved for a display devoted to Lofton Hazelwood, who, as many of you know, unfortunately passed away at the University of Kentucky. He was just a freshman, very tragic. And many of these kids had gone to school with Lofton, both at Holy Name and then at County High. And Lofton is obviously not Hispanic, but they felt so adamantly that they wanted to use that moment at Day of the Dead, which is an important festival in the religious calendar in the Latino community, to do just that, honor people who are loved and have passed before us, to specifically offer their condolences to the family and put Lofton Hazelwood, not a Hispanic, at that very place of honor. I thought that was not only a very nice gesture, but it is yet another example of how we're closing this gap between whatever that gap is, between our Latino community and the rest of us. So that was very poignant. The Hazelwood family came at the very end of the evening to look at the display, and they actually helped provide many items that Lofton liked to help that display look great, and they were very emotional. And a lot of the Hispanic families of those kids that had suggested this came up, and there were a lot of hugs and tears. But the family thought that it was a really cool way to continue to remember Lofton and express gratitude to his Hispanic friends who had suggested this. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. And we're going to continue to hold this festival, and I think it's interesting, and it draws a lot of people beyond Hispanic folks here and beyond just Henderson County. And so thanks again. If you came by, it was pretty cool. Want to second compliments on the blacktopping. I think it's gone well. There were a lot of people may not know this, but twice during the process, the asphalt plant broke. Couldn't provide us the asphalt we needed. They had to get that fixed before we could get going. There was weather. Explained to a citizen the difficulty in blacktopping our roads in very short amount of time. Sometimes it takes a couple months to get it done, and sure enough, there were delays. But I think this week may be the last of it, don't you think, Bill? Yeah.
Except for walking trail at Sandy Lake.
Yeah, and that'll happen soon here too. Yeah. So thank you to all the road crew for everything they did to get through that and get some great new blacktop down. Hope everybody can keep in their prayers. We have some staff members who are experiencing some pretty significant health issues, and obviously can't go into that detail, but we do. And they're people you know, and so you might keep them in your prayers. Congratulations to Lindsay LaCosta, who has now been named president of the chamber starting in December. Strong chamber of commerce is always important in any community. She's coming from Downtown Henderson Partnership, where she did an outstanding job. The Downtown Henderson Partnership is now searching for a replacement. Kurt Hamilton's the chair, so if you know a good candidate, contact Kurt. But we wish Lindsay the best. Veterans Day is coming up on Thursday, and many of you might have attended in the past the big Veterans Day celebration at South Middle School. They're not going to be able to do that this year because of COVID concerns. They're still going to have the ceremony. It's going to be broadcast live by WSON, so listen in. It's always students always do a great job of that, and I appreciate it very much. Take that opportunity to say that we have more than a dozen military veterans who work in our departments, and we appreciate every single one of them and their service, and they are some of our best and brightest employees. And I'm going to be making a list of them to put online on social media that day to remind everybody how many we have that are military veterans, including the man to my left. And that's a great way to segue into my last point. Is this is at Holy Name, this is Gratitude Month. Celebrate Gratitude is the theme at Holy Name, and they have a sign out in front of the church to celebrate gratitude and being gracious and thankful for everybody around you. And I want to say I have a lot of gratitude for my staff, our team up here. All county employees, obviously, but especially Mr. Weeson, Paula Wilson, Angela Comer, Shirley Pruitt, Brent Hepner, Brenda, Brent Jacobs, James Bosler, who has now quickly made himself an indispensable part of our team up here and done a terrific job. I have great people working for fiscal court, for other departments, and just to help me day in and day out, and that is a tall task. So I'm grateful for them. Try to show my gratitude this month when it's really reminding a great thing to be grateful. And Paige, we're grateful for you. Very proud of you, and I know your family is. I know your schoolmates are. It's a big deal, and I'm really glad you're able to be here today. Congratulations on all your accomplishments. Keep it up, and I do hope you pick out the very bestest restaurant ever to go have lunch. And as far as I know, you don't have to wait around for dessert. You can just have dessert for lunch. There's no rule against that either. I don't know how your family feel about your teachers, but the last Judge's Scholar I took out to lunch ate one French fry, one bite of a drumstick chicken, and then went straight to the dessert bar at Golden Corral and crushed it. And it was all good. So just want you to know it's fair game, okay? Thank you for letting me ramble on a little bit like that. At that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Judge, one thing I just thought of, our industrial regional board meeting. Do we want to mention any of that about the TVA fund, the changes and what happened to it and how it's got to go through a special entity?
Right. Is everybody familiar with the what they call PDI, but it's really the TVA in lieu of money that they're now giving to counties for economic development. We've done this, we've gotten this money 2-3 years now, and we just got our figure. The amount of money available to us this year is $153,000 and change, which is yet another increase, as we were told. They did put a wrinkle in, the legislature did, as they like to do, without really warning anybody. Instead of just designating an economic development organization, they made it specific that we had to give it to a special purpose government entity, SPGE. And SPGEs are, I think, partially defined by the fact that more than 50% of their funding comes from public sector, public governments, and their meetings are subject to open records laws and all those things. It was going to be problematic for us because, you know, the last couple of years, ever since we started, we designated it to our economic development agency, which is not an SPGE. But it was a good place to put it. They were, you know, careful with it. They knew what projects were needed. Thankfully, though, this year, through your wisdom and our effort, we have stood up again the Henderson Industrial Development Authority, or IDA, which is a special purpose government entity. So, and Butch Putman serves on that board. So we do have a place to direct this money. They will work hand in hand with economic development to figure out a place to spend it. Missy Vanderpool, who's president of economic development, sits on that board. This time around, we do not have to designate our recipient ahead of time. We can wait till we actually have a request to spend the money, and we can do it all at one time, both designate the entity and then approve the project. And the entity, we're going to recommend that it be the IDA because that is the only special purpose government entity we can do that with. I guess we could give it to, we talked about this, it could go to the Riverport, which actually is kind of an SPGE, as well as the 4-Star Board of Directors. But the IDA is kind of I think the neutral party in there, makes most sense, and they work with the Riverport and with the 4-Star Board. So that would be my recommendation. Butch, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well.
Okay. So
we would have to come to the court for approval, obviously.
Right, exactly. Might send Greg Pritchett a note. Just want to give you a heads up on that. Thanks for reminding me of that. So, thank you, Butch. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you all for being here. All those in favor can leave.